April 8, 1945. A rusted elevator cage hangs over a black void. You are standing in the Merkers salt mine. Germany is dying. You can smell the ozone and the damp salt. General George S. Patton steps into the cage. He does not wait for a safety check. He is a man who outruns his own logistics. The cage drops, 2,000 feet into the earth. The air gets heavy. It tastes like ancient dust. Patton reaches the bottom. He steps out into a cavern. The light from his flashlight hits the back wall. It does not bounce back. It is swallowed by a mountain of canvas bags. He slices one open. Gold coins spill across the salt floor like a ruptured artery. April 14, 1945. American soldiers crack open the main vault door. Inside, 198 gold bars, billions in paper currency. Priceless paintings by Rembrandt and Manet stacked like common lumber. You need to understand the scale. The Reichsbank had been moving gold out of Berlin since February. The bombs were getting closer. The Reich was collapsing inward. Merkers was the destination. A potassium mine in Thuringia, deep, dry, easy to seal. They moved everything. The foreign currency reserves, the financial nervous system of the Third Reich, all of it packed into wooden crates, hidden under a ton of rock. Patton stands in silence. He is a man of war. He understands steel. He understands blood. He does not flinch. He does not reach for the gold. He reaches for a telephone. That choice, that single deliberate choice, is what this story is actually about. The Third Army is screaming across Germany. Fuel is low. Men are tired. Patton looks at the gold. He sees leverage. He calls Eisenhower. He calls Bradley. He tells them to come down. They walk deeper into the mine. They find the second room. This room is different. There are no gold bars here. There are no masterworks. There are crates, thousands of them. Patton opens one. He stops. His hand shakes. The crate is filled with wedding rings, plain gold bands, thousands of them. Some still have names engraved inside. He opens another. Silver spoons. Another. Eyeglass frames. Then he finds the small boxes. They are filled with gold teeth. You see the shift in his eyes. This is not wealth. This is a graveyard. This gold was not mined. It was harvested. The tension in the mine changes. The air becomes unbreathable. Eisenhower turns away. He is sick. Patton stares. He realizes the gold bars in the first room were melted from these rings. The currency was printed on the backs of the dead. Now comes the choice. The war is almost over. The Russians are coming from the east. They want their share. Stalin is watching. He knows what Patton found. The bureaucrats in Washington want the gold for the banks. Patton wants it gone before the politicians can touch it. He orders a massive convoy, hundreds of trucks, thousands of guards. He treats the gold like a captured army. He does not trust the peace that is coming. Keep it secret, he tells his officers. If the world knows what is down here, the war changes. The trucks start rolling. April 14th. Midnight. Imagine the sound. Hundreds of heavy engines idling in the dark. Each truck carries enough wealth to buy a city. But something is wrong. The manifest says one thing. The weight says another. Patton watches the crates move. He notices a crate from the ring room is missing. Then another. He rounds up the guards. He demands answers. The guards look at the floor. They are tired. They have seen too much death. To them, a gold ring is just a ticket home. Patton realizes the theft isn't happening outside the mine. It is happening inside his own ranks. The graveyard gold is already disappearing. The destination is the Reichsbank in Frankfurt, a vault built to survive a nuclear strike. They arrive. The unloading takes days. The clerks begin the count. This is the first shock. The total value is off. Millions of dollars are gone. Not just rings. Entire bars of gold. Patton orders a lockdown. No one leaves. No one speaks. Then, the second shock hits. A message arrives from the east. The Soviets claim the gold belongs to the liberators. Patton refuses. He tells Eisenhower to hold the line. He wants to use the gold as a weapon. We are going to have to fight them eventually, Patton says. Why not do it while we have their money? Eisenhower is horrified. He sees a third world war. The tension breaks. The politicians step in. The gold is locked away. But here is the twist you were never told. Years later, the records were declassified. The errors in the count weren't errors. The gold was being siphoned. Not by soldiers. By the architects of the New World. Some of that gold ended up in Switzerland. Some ended up in South America. The gold that was once wedding rings was used to buy the escape of the people who stole the rings in the first place. The killers paid for their freedom with the teeth of their victims. Patton knew. He started to talk. He started to write. We have destroyed what could have been a good race, he wrote, and we are replacing them with Mongolian savages. He was becoming a liability. He knew where the gold went. He knew who signed the papers. Then came the accident, a low-speed collision, a broken neck. The man who survived the greatest tanks in the world died in the back of a stationary car. The files on the Merkers gold were sealed for decades. When they were finally opened, the numbers still didn't add up. 200 bags of gold coins, gone. 37 crates of silver, vanished. The mine is empty now. The tourists walk through the salt tunnels. They look at the walls. They don't see the ghosts. They don't see the general standing over a mountain of teeth. You have to ask yourself, is the world built on ideals? Or is it built on the interest from a debt that can never be paid? Patton found the price of victory. It was $20 million in gold and $1 billion in blood. If you were standing in that mine and you saw the names inside those rings, would you have reported it to the world, knowing the thieves would use it to buy their way out? Or would you have burned the mine to the ground and let the dead keep their gold? Leave a comment. Tell me if justice has a price tag. 2 American soldiers found it by accident. They stopped a woman on a road near Merkers. She mentioned the mine. They went to look. Then they called it in. Within 48 hours, Patton was standing in the vault. Imagine you were standing there with him. You've been fighting for years. You've watched men die for patches of mud. You are one of the most powerful military figures in the Western world, operating thousands of miles from Washington, with communications that are slow, with oversight that is distant, with a war that is nearly won. And in front of you is $20 million in gold. In 1945 money, that number today would be somewhere above 200 million. Some historians put it higher. No one is watching. Not really. Not right now. What does a man do in that moment? What did Patton do? He called Eisenhower. That's the whole story, on the surface. Patton found it, reported it up the chain, and waited for orders. Eisenhower flew in personally within days. They stood in the vault together. Eisenhower reportedly made a dark joke about the gold, making them the richest soldiers in history. Then he left. Then the protocols began. But here is where the story gets complicated. Because what Patton did with the gold is one thing. What happened to the gold afterward is something else entirely. You need to understand the political weight of what was in that mine. This wasn't American gold. It wasn't German gold, not legitimately. Much of it had been stolen. From governments. From banks. From individuals who had been murdered. The dental gold alone was enough to make the discovery a war crime exhibit rather than a military victory. The Allied governments had already debated this. The Bretton Woods Conference the previous year had tried to build a framework for post-war finance. Who owned what? Who owed whom? The gold in Merkers was going to be at the center of those arguments for decades. Patton knew this. He wasn't naive. He was many things, vain, reckless with his words, dangerously convinced of his own mythology, but he was not naive about geopolitics. He understood that touching that gold without authorization was a career-ending error at minimum. At maximum, it was a political catastrophe that could destabilize Allied trust at the worst possible moment. So he didn't touch it. He reported it. And then he kept moving. The Third Army was still advancing. There were more mines, more caches. The SS had been hiding assets all over the region as the Reich collapsed. Patton's forces found art, found currency, found more gold in the weeks that followed. Each time, same protocol. Report it, secure it, move on. What happened after Patton left is a different and darker story. The Merkers treasure was transported to Frankfurt, catalogued, eventually folded into what became the Tripartite Gold Commission, an international body that spent decades trying to return looted gold to its rightful owners. The process was slow. It was incomplete. Much of the dental gold was unidentifiable. Some of the art went to the wrong places and stayed there for years. Patton had no part in any of that. By the time the bureaucratic machinery engaged, he was already 1,000 miles further into Germany, fighting the last weeks of a war he was certain he could have won faster if anyone had let him. Here's what the history books tend to skip. Patton didn't just report the gold because he was virtuous. He reported it because he was calculating. He had already been reprimanded. The slapping incident, 2 separate occasions, 2 hospitalized soldiers, 1 enormous scandal, had nearly ended his command. He was operating on probation, in everything but name. One wrong move and Eisenhower would have no choice but to pull him. He wanted to keep fighting. That was his entire existence in 1945. The gold was a distraction. Worse, it was a trap. Any general who appeared to be enriching himself or making unauthorized decisions about enemy assets in the middle of a war was finished. Patton understood this with the same cold clarity he applied to tank formations. The right thing and the smart thing aligned perfectly, which raises the question of whether it was really virtue at all. There is one detail that historians still argue about. Patton's diary entries from those weeks are unusually sparse. A man who wrote obsessively, who documented his dreams, his frustrations, his opinions on every general above and below him, suddenly becomes very quiet around the exact period of the Merkers' discovery. There's no definitive explanation for this. Some scholars say he was simply too busy. Some say he was cautious about putting anything sensitive in writing. Some say it's exactly what you'd expect from a man trying to keep a clean record at a moment of enormous sensitivity. What's not in dispute, the gold was accounted for. The inventory Patton's people compiled was thorough. Nothing significant went missing in the weeks his forces controlled the site. Compared to war, all other forms of human endeavor shrink to insignificance. George S. Patton. He said that. He meant it. And in April 1945, surrounded by the financial remains of a collapsing empire, he acted on it. The gold wasn't the war. The gold was a problem for accountants and diplomats and commissions that would last until the 1990s. The war was 60 miles east. He had men to move, lines to break, a march he believed history would judge as one of the great military achievements of the century. He wasn't wrong about that. He wasn't entirely right either. The gold took decades to partially resolve. Some of it was never returned. The people it was stolen from, or their descendants, waited in line for justice that came slowly, incompletely, and far too late. Patton followed protocol. The protocol was broken, and the most powerful general in the theater didn't break it further, because he had his own priorities. Here's the question no one has a clean answer to. If Patton had made different choices with that gold, distributed it to surviving communities, returned it unilaterally to liberated nations, or used it to fund his own advance, would history have judged him as a criminal, a hero, or something in between? And would he have been wrong?